Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into some really incredible stories about how people are finding peace and connection. It's all about boosting mental well-being, but here's the catch. We're leaving AI out of the picture this time.
Oh, interesting. So no fancy algorithms or apps this time around. I'm intrigued.
Nope, we're going old school, focusing on the power of human connection.
Makes sense. I mean, we've all heard the saying, it takes a village, right?
Exactly. And we're going to see that in action. We've got these amazing examples like community gardens that turn into like these vibrant social hubs. And we're talking about support groups where people find strength in being vulnerable with each other.
So it's really focusing on how we as humans can support each other and ourselves without relying on technology.
You got it. Oh, and we've even got stories about how creative things like art and writing can help us process those heavy emotions.
That's something I've always been fascinated by, how creativity can almost be like a therapeutic outlet.
It's pretty amazing. I was blown away by some of these stories.
I bet. So are we ready to dive in then?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I think what's so fascinating about all this is that it really shines a light on human connection being like the secret weapon against loneliness. You know, like it's that key ingredient for feeling good and well.
It's true. I mean, we are social creatures by nature. We crave connection. We need it to thrive.
For sure. And it's not just about being around other people. It's about that feeling of belonging, that you're part of something bigger.
Absolutely. Purpose and belonging. Those are two biggies.
Right. And like in this one example, there's this community garden that started because people needed fresh food, but it blossomed into this crazy social network, like right in the middle of everything.
See, that's what I love about this. It's practical and it brings people together.
Totally. So you're outside getting your hands dirty, growing food, and suddenly you're like best friends with your neighbors.
And let's not forget all those psychological benefits woven into that. The sense of purpose you get from nurturing something, the satisfaction of like contributing to your community.
And don't forget the connections, right? Your share of stories, swapping recipes, maybe even some gardening tips. It's a melting pot of all ages and backgrounds.
It's beautiful. And imagine, for someone who might be feeling isolated, they find this welcoming space where they're needed, where their contributions matter.
Right. It's powerful stuff. Like I was reading this one story, and it really hit me how important that feeling of being needed is.
And it all loops back to that basic human need for connection, right? It buffers against stress, bumps up your self-esteem, and even helps you handle tough times better.
We're stronger together, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And that's so evident in the support group story we've got. There's this diverse group of people all on their own mental health journeys, and they find strength in just sharing their stories, realizing, hey, I'm not alone in this.
Ah, that's so powerful. That vulnerability actually becomes their strength.
It really does. I was struck by how simply sharing their experiences helped these folks shift from feeling like they were struggling alone to feeling this sense of collective resilience. It's a beautiful shift. When we hear other people's stories, it often helps put our own challenges into perspective.
For sure. It's like suddenly you realize that everyone's carrying some kind of weight.
Mm.
And when you share it, well, the load feels a little lighter
No,
for everyone.
that's a great way to put it.
So I'm curious, thinking about your own life, what are some ways you could tap into that power of community? Like, is there a local event you've been thinking about checking out, or maybe a book club you want to join?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Or even something online. There's a whole world of communities online these days.
Don't forget about just striking up a conversation with your neighbors or people you work with. Sometimes those little interactions can turn into some pretty meaningful connections.
You're so right. And even a smile or a quick good morning can brighten someone's day. You never know. Speaking of brightening things up, let's shift gears for a bit and talk about mindfulness. It's one of those practices that's been around forever, but it feels so relevant, in today's crazy busy world.
It does. And we've got this amazing story about a monk who's bringing meditation to, get this, city parks.
Wow, a monk in the park. Now that's bringing mindfulness to the people.
Right. It shows just how adaptable this whole mindfulness thing can be. It's not just for, secluded retreats or mountaintops or whatever.
Exactly. And what's cool is that this monk understood how hectic city life can be, and he found a way to make mindfulness accessible right in the middle of all the craziness.
It's like bringing a little oasis of calm right into the chaos.
Love it. An oasis of calm. And speaking of bringing mindfulness to unexpected places, we also have this story about a school that decided to weave it into their daily
Oh,
routine.
yeah, that one was incredible. They had the teachers and students starting their day with these quick guided meditations and practicing mindful breathing between classes.
Hold on, hold on. Before we jump into the amazing results, let's make sure everyone's on the same page about what mindfulness actually is.
Right, good point. It's not just, zoning out or anything.
No, it's not zoning out at all. It's about paying attention to the present moment, like really paying attention, but without judgment. Just noticing your thoughts, your feelings, your sensations.
Yeah, it's like you're noticing them, but you're not getting all swept up in them. Like you're not getting caught up in the story they're trying to tell.
Exactly. You're observing them, but you're not letting them control you.
And you won't believe the changes that happened at that school. The students, they could focus better in class. There were fewer arguments and disagreements. And get this, even more empathy between them.
Wow. It sounds like it really shifted the whole atmosphere of the school.
It did. And even disciplinary issues went down. It makes you think, like, what if every school did this?
Right. The possibilities are huge. It really makes you wonder if you could fit even just a few minutes of mindfulness into your own day.
You really don't need a ton of time, special
Yeah.
equipment, or any fancy training.
Nope. You don't need a yoga mat or anything.
It can be as simple as taking a few deep breaths before you dive into work, or maybe turn your daily walk into like a walking meditation.
Oh, I love that. Or even mindful eating. Really savoring each bite of food.
Yes, paying attention to all the flavors and textures. Okay, so we've talked about the power of community, dipped our toes into the world of mindfulness. Now how about we explore how creative expression can be a tool for healing and processing emotions? We've got some pretty inspiring stories about art therapy and what it really means to let go.
It's incredible, isn't it, how these stories show that creative expression can be such a powerful tool for healing. Like, we often think about mental health as this individual struggle, but these examples really highlight how important external support systems are. And they also show how giving ourselves permission to be creative can actually lead to healing.
It's like we're building this toolkit filled with all these different strategies, not just for coping, but for actually thriving, you know? And I think you're right. It's not about erasing challenges altogether, but it's about having the resources to move through those tough times and come out stronger,
Mm.
more resilient.
Absolutely. And that sense of agency is so important. Discovering what works for you personally. Maybe for you, it's connecting with others, or maybe it's expressing yourself creatively to process what you're going through.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a bit of both, right? Like think about that community garden we were talking about. It wasn't just about the social aspect. It was also about creating something beautiful and beneficial together. There's something magical about watching things grow and bloom under your care.
That's such a great point. Tending a garden, it really is a form of creative expression, isn't it? And it circles back to that sense of purpose. Remember, we talked about that earlier. Purpose can be such a powerful driver of well-being. It gives us direction, motivation, and helps us feel like we're contributing to something larger than ourselves.
And it doesn't have to be this grand, life-altering purpose, It can be as simple as tending a garden or volunteering at a local shelter, even just being a supportive friend or family member. Those everyday acts of kindness and connection, they really can make a difference.
Absolutely. The most important thing is that it aligns with your values,
Mhm.
and gives you that feeling of fulfillment. Another theme that popped up in a lot of the stories we've talked about is this idea of letting go. Whether it was veterans processing trauma through art or that woman who found self-forgiveness through writing, letting go seems to be such a crucial part of healing.
It does, doesn't it? It feels like letting go is so essential for mental well-being, but it's definitely easier said than done.
Hmm.
We tend to hold on to all those grudges and regrets, those past hurts, and it can weigh us down emotionally, almost like we're carrying around this invisible baggage.
Invisible baggage, I love that. And that baggage can manifest in all sorts of ways. Anxiety, stress, even physical symptoms sometimes. It's crazy how interconnected our minds and bodies really are.
So how do we actually learn to let go? It can feel like this abstract concept.
It is a process, that's for sure. And it's going to look different for everyone. Therapy can be super helpful for some people, especially when dealing with deeper emotional issues. Others might find peace and healing through creative expression or spirituality. There's really no one-size-fits-all approach.
That makes sense. Earlier we were talking about mindfulness. Could that be helpful for letting go?
Absolutely. Mindfulness teaches us to observe our thoughts and feelings without judging them. So instead of getting sucked into those negative thought spirals or dwelling on the past, we can simply acknowledge those thoughts and feelings and then let them go.
It's like watching clouds drift by, right? You don't try to control them or hold on to them. You just watch them float by.
Exactly. I love that analogy. But it's important to be realistic too, When we're dealing with heavier stuff like trauma or grief, mindfulness can be helpful, but it's not a cure-all. Sometimes professional help is necessary.
Right, it's about finding the right support system and the right tools for what you're going through. Healing's a journey, it's not like a destination. There will be ups and downs, setbacks and breakthroughs along the way.
You got it. It's about being patient with yourself, honoring your own unique healing process and recognizing that there isn't one right way to do it. What works for one person might not work for another. It's all about experimenting, trying new things, and finding what clicks for you.
And being open to those new things, right? Maybe it's a form of creative expression you've never tried before, or joining a community group that seems a little outside your comfort zone. You never know what might spark joy or bring you new connections.
So true. Stepping outside your comfort zone is often where the biggest growth happens. And sometimes the smallest steps make the biggest difference, like incorporating a few minutes of mindfulness each day or just reaching out to a friend or family member when you need support.
It's realizing that we don't have to go through things alone. There's help out there, people who care.
Such an important message, and it brings us right back to what we've been exploring today, that human connection. We're social creatures, wired for connection, for belonging. And when things get tough, those connections can be our lifeline.
Whether it's a friend, a therapist, or a support group, having people who understand and care can make all the difference in the world.
And sometimes the smallest acts of kindness have the biggest impact. Listening, offering a kind word, just being there for someone.
It's about being there for each other, in those big moments and the small ones, creating a culture of compassion, of understanding, where it's okay to not be okay.
I love that. Normalizing those ups and downs instead of pretending everything's perfect all the time.
So as we continue our deep dive, I want you to think about the power of human connection in your own life. Who are the people you can turn to when you need support?
Such a good question. And how can we be a source of support for the people in our lives? How can we build even stronger connections in our communities?
These are definitely things to think about as we head into the final part of our exploration. Welcome back, everyone. It's pretty amazing when you think about it, right? All these different stories we've been talking about, community gardens, support groups, mindfulness, even art therapy, they all seem to point to the same basic idea, don't they?
It really is remarkable. It's like they're all whispering this message about how vital human connection truly is. Like, we're not meant to go it alone in this life. We do better, we thrive when we connect, when we share our experiences, when we support each other and let ourselves be supported.
It's like we're all part of this, I don't know, giant web of humanity. And those connections there would give us strength, make us more resilient.
You're absolutely right. And that interconnectedness, it's not just some nice idea. It's crucial for our mental and emotional well-being. We've seen firsthand how that sense of belonging can buffer against stress, help people feel less alone, and build up that resilience when things get tough.
Absolutely. We've also seen how mindfulness and creative expression can be such powerful tools for understanding ourselves better, handling our emotions, and even processing some really difficult experiences.
It's powerful stuff. It really is. And I think the biggest takeaway here is that we have more power than we often realize. Power over our own mental health. It's not about pretending that everything's always sunshine and rainbows.
Right. It's about accepting that life has challenges.
Exactly. It's about being prepared, having those tools and support systems in place so you can navigate those challenges and come out the other side with, maybe a little more wisdom, a little more grace.
And knowing that you don't have to do it all alone.
Exactly. Sometimes you need a little help to stay afloat. So as we wrap up today's deep dive, I wanted to ask, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners? Anything you hope they take away from this conversation?
Oh, for sure. First and foremost, remember that you're not alone. There are people who care, and there's help available if you need it. Don't hesitate to reach out.
Couldn't agree more. And remember to be kind to yourself. Healing takes time. It's not a race. You'll have ups and downs, setbacks along the way. That's all part of the process.
It is. What else?
Oh, and never underestimate the power of those human connections. Lean on your friends, your family, maybe a support group. Sharing your story, listening to others, letting yourself be supported can make a huge difference.
It can. It really can. Sometimes just having someone to talk to can change everything.
That's the truth. And lastly, remember that you have the power to create a life filled with connection, with meaning, with well-being. It all starts with small steps. Taking a moment to be mindful, finding a creative outlet, connecting with a loved one, all those little acts of self-care, every connection you make, every story you share, they all add up. You're creating a brighter future, not just for yourself, but for those around you.
Beautifully said. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thank you all so much for joining us.
We hope you found it insightful and maybe even inspiring. And remember, you have more power than you think to create a life filled with connection and well-being. Take care, everyone.